friends, my name is Dr. Amy Morgan, and I am a friend and colleague of Dr. Melissa Carlisle Golden. She asked me to share a little bit about how our brains respond under long-term traumatic stress. So I want to talk to you today about first, how our brains respond and what our emergency brain looks like. Second, I want to talk about how to give your emergency brain a rest. And third, I'm going to talk about what we should be looking forward to as COVID-19 starts to change directions and as things start reopening. So first, did you know that you have an emergency brain? So you have a little tiny part in the center of your brain called your amygdala. It's part of your limbic system, and it is responsible for essentially weighing every piece of information that you get through your two senses, and it only makes two calls. It either says, oh, this is safe, move toward this, or nope, this is dangerous, move away. When your amygdala gets a piece of information in that it senses as particularly threatening, then it switches your brain into emergency mode. And when it switches your brain into emergency mode, your emergency brain shuts down your thinker. It shuts down the front part of your brain right behind your forehead called your prefrontal cortex, which is where we make all of our logical decisions. It's where we do our creating, and it is where we do our connecting and our sensing of reality. But when you're in an emergency situation, nobody has time for that. So your amygdala shuts down your prefrontal cortex and sends you into fight or flight mode. There are a lot of things involved in the brain and body in fight or flight mode, but essentially, your brain is looking to get out of the dangerous situation as best it can. If fight or flight is blocked, your brain will send your body into freeze mode. This is kind of the equivalent of playing possum. And it's a last-ditch effort to keep you alive. So this is great whenever we are in immediate danger because your brain is doing what it needs to keep you alive. And a lot of times that involves moving with our bodies and acting before we have time for the information to get all the way to our prefrontal cortex so that we can process, is this a garden hose or is this a snake? So the problem happens whenever the danger doesn't pass quickly and we get stuck in emergency brain for a longer period of time. So emergency brain is great at crisis, but it is terrible at nuance. Its job is to keep you alive, and it's really good at that, but unfortunately it lumps all kinds of danger together, and it doesn't have a way to distinguish between physical threats to your actual life and existential threats to your well-being, like rejection. Social rejection is processed the same way as physical danger. Sometimes even anxiety and certain emotions get lumped in as super dangerous, and your amygdala is just bad at being able to nuance its decisions. Like I said, it only makes those two calls: good, safe, or dangerous, move away. So your emergency brain not only is bad at nuance, but it's a really bad long-term boss. Emergency brain's job is to keep us alive, and so it dumps adrenaline and cortisol into our bodies. And adrenaline and cortisol, adrenaline hypes our body up to get it ready to respond, and cortisol tries to tamp it down so that we are not running out of control. So too much adrenaline in your system over a very long period of time can cause things like heightened blood pressure, heart problems, and too much cortisol can cause things like gastrointestinal problems, and both can cause problems with your respiratory system. So long-term stress can have very real physical effects. Not only do we experience these kinds of things in our bodies, but we also experience the inability to really distinguish the past from the present. We start reacting to present events as though things from the past are still going on. And then this emergency brain specializes in self-defense and protectiveness. The problem is that emergency brain is not able to access all of the things that we do in our higher brain, in the cortex. So we aren't able to be creative. We aren't able to learn new things. We aren't able to really connect well with other people when emergency brain is on. And all of these are really problematic losses for our long-term functioning and well-being. So what can we do? Well, the problem is that COVID-19 is a long-term issue. It's just not ending. And so our brains are a lot of our brains are staying in this hypervigilant mode because this stress is long term. The other problematic thing is that we can't run out of it. So we can't get out of it, so we're kind of stuck. So our emergency brains are doing a lot of work right now. So the number one thing that you can do in the middle of this is give your emergency brain a rest. You can't just talk to your emergency brain and tell it to take a day off. And you know why? Because your prefrontal cortex is off. And that's where you do all your logical self-talk. So the more helpful things that we can do before we try to talk to our cortex and tell it the truth are some very physical things to help our body be able to realize in itself that it is safe. So number one, create a schedule. In creating a schedule, you take away a lot of the decisions that your brain has to make on a daily basis and free up more room in your brain for other things. Number two, move your body. You got to get that adrenaline out. You got to get that cortisol out. So aerobic exercise is very good for this. Also things like yoga and Pilates, different types of exercise that help you pay attention to what's going on in your body. Number three, care for your basic needs. Eat good food and get the sleep that you need. These things tell your body that it is indeed safe, and they allow the higher parts of your brain to come back online. Number four, connect with people that you love, specifically through play. Play has a very specific function in your brain that allows you to feel, it only comes on when you feel safe. So if you can do things with people that you love that make you laugh, or you can share those playful and laughter experiences together, your body you're gonna be communicating to your body that it is safe. And number five, acknowledge your fears during this time and the losses that we have all experienced. As you acknowledge your fears, you will be able to make good calls about them and about how to live in the middle of those instead of just reacting and shooting from the hip. And as we acknowledge our losses, we allow ourselves to grieve. We allow ourselves to grieve those things and to move forward. Doing those two things allows us to live in a more fuller and accurate version of reality. So lastly and quickly, as COVID-19 the cases start to diminish and restrictions begin to be lifted, there's one other thing that you can do. You will need to begin telling your COVID-19 story. The two things that keep us trapped in long-term stress are not being able to get out of it, and we talked about ways to help get around that. And then the second thing that keeps us trapped is not being able to fully tell the story. So you are going to need to tell yourself the story and to talk about it with people that you love and that you care about over and over and over again. As we tell our stories, as we talk not just about what happened, but as we talk about how it made us feel and the things that we lost and the fears that we had. And as the time moves on, we should be able to tell a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And as we are able to tell that story more fully, our brains are able to put that story in the past so that we can begin living in the new reality, whatever that looks like, but so that we can stop living as though we are stuck in April of 2020. So as you tell your story, you're also going to need to look out for your own reactions. We all are probably going to overreact to things in the future. Perhaps things like going to the grocery store or when governments impose safety restrictions or just staying at home for too long. It is very likely that our bodies are going to remember April and March of 2020 and be like, oh no, this is very bad. Very bad things happened the last time we did this. And it's likely that our bodies will overreact in the future. And so the more that we are able to tell our stories of traumatic events, and the more accurately we're able to tell them, the more prepared we're going to be to recognize whenever our bodies are responding to events from the past rather than responding to the actual threat of the present moment and whether the threat is actually there or not. So that is my encouragement to you. I hope that the brain part just gives you a little bit of information about what's going on inside of you so you can have some empathy for yourself. And then I hope that you are able to create schedules, move your body, connect with people, care for your basic needs, and recognize your own fears and losses. And that you're able to begin telling your COVID-19 story so that as time moves on, we are able to let this event be in the past and be able to function in the new normal, whatever that looks like. Thanks so much.